I wonder if you've ever sewn a comfy pullover that has bust darts. Makes all the difference in the fit. You can see one in stretch velvet behind me, and I have another one in a sweater knit. And if you're new to sewing, you're going to find this project easy to make for yourself. Come join me. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today I have a really fun project to share with you. And I think if you're newer to sewing, you are going to find this type of project super accessible. It is definitely the type that looks more complex than it really is. Once you get through the steps, you just realize it's just a lot of long seams, pretty much straight seams to make this garment. And this is a pullover. It's called Bainbridge Pullover from Itch to Stitch. I really enjoyed sewing two of my versions. I have seen designs like this in the past, ready to wear. I've even tried on styles like this. Super comfortable, and I was never happy with the fit around here, around the bust. I think when you have a larger cup size, these types of designs can look super boxy and shapeless and just doesn't look very nice, although they are very practical and you could always wear them out for walks. When it's cold, you want to layer up. They are really practical garments, but this one is totally different. It is a sewing pattern with cup sizes, and I love that. I love that Kenneth, the designer of Itch to Stitch, incorporates this into her patterns. And even though this is a knit garment, the cup sizes are still available, and I think that is amazing because it makes all the difference to my decision to wanting to make a pattern like this and to wear a style like this. I usually pass on styles like this because of the lack of bust shaping, and in my mind the thought was always there, why can't these garments just have a little bit more shaping? Why can't we have a dart in a knit? And I have sewn darts in knits before. It's not something you can't do. It's just something you don't see commonly in patterns. This one does have a dart, and I'm so happy. As you can see, it's got a short little collar. The edges of the collar, the sleeves, and the bottom hem are bias bound, so you're not folding up hems or doing anything like that. And then there's a placket, a half placket, and to make that even easier to sew, there's a seam that goes across horizontally, which makes it extremely easy to sew. If you didn't have that seam on the front, then you have to do a whole other technique. But this one makes it super easy. On the front, you have inseam pockets. They don't have like a pocket bag inside that moves around. It's just one piece that is sewn onto the front, and you have an open access through the side seam. Very easy to sew. They're not going to give you bulk on the front, on the side, anywhere like that. And the bottom of that pocket is caught in the binding that you have at the bottom. The feet on the shoulder is slightly dropped. It's not super dropped, it's just a little bit, which makes sense with a style like this that's more relaxed. Long sleeves, of course. And the shining star of this pattern is that bust dart. So you will have different cup sizes here from A to double D. According to that, you will have a different size darts that will give you excellent shaping here on the side. No excess fabric or folds here. It's such a nice fit, so smooth down the side. That is something I would like to achieve with garments that I make for myself, that they fit the bust really well, and this pullover accomplishes that 200%. So I was very excited to test this pattern and see how this was going to look on me with that feature. You know the drill. Usually new patterns, when they are released, they are on sale for a week. 20% off in this case. You can get this pattern for a lower price and enjoy making yourself something that's going to be very practical. My affiliate link to the pattern is in the description box if you would like to use it to purchase your pattern. I make a little commission from there. I super appreciate it if you use my link because that supports me. Thank you so much if you do use it. You don't want knit fabrics that stretch too much, so you really want a low stretch knit, anywhere from 5 to 15%. You can even choose knit fabrics that have like a mechanical stretch. I don't have access to these fabrics, but I know a lot of the testers made it from wool knits, boucle, and types of knits like that that are super cozy, but they don't have spandex in them. They just stretch mechanically, and that is perfectly fine. You could use fleece, sherpa, sweatshirting material. You know, I have a hard time finding fleece that is good quality, that I like. All the fleece I've ever seen here is already peeling in the shop. Like you see the fabric on the boat, it's already peeling, and that makes me not want to buy it because the garment just looks cheap when it's made with fabric like that. And I find fleece extremely hot to wear as well, so I haven't had success finding a nice fleece to sew with. But you might have access to better quality fleece. If I ever found my perfect fleece, it would be a very lightweight one, but I've never found it. So I sort of discard it when I see fleece in recommended fabrics because I know I'm not going to have it. Sherpa also is a fabric I don't have access to. The type of sweatshirting material I've been able to find here is really thick and stiff and not something I enjoy wearing. I've chosen fabrics that have low stretch. One is a stretch velvet that has a bit of a print on it, which I really enjoy, and the other one is a sweater knit, which is a little bit thinner. It has a little bit of drape, but it's still appropriate because it's got that low stretch factor. It's really easy to mix this type of knit with the woven accents here from the placket and the binding. You can use 25mm or 1-inch store-bought bias tape to finish the top of the collar, sleeves and the bottom hem, or you can make your own. I suggest making your own because you have the placket that is made out of woven too, and I can't fathom having another type of binding that is store-bought and then the placket made in some of your woven fabrics. I just prefer to make it myself, and it's not hard, and I'll show you that later. I've chosen to contrast one of them, a really lightweight denim, and with the other one I used a cotton shirting, which is perfect, feels super soft, super easy to work with, and these types of structured cottons just make all this even easier, so it's very nice. You'll find a great size range here from 00 to 40 US, and that'll go up to a bust of 63 inches and a hip of 62 inches. And as I mentioned before, you have cups A, B, C, D and double D, which is amazing. I always use the C cup with great results. I've been sewing itch to stitch patterns for a few years now, and the C cup is marvelous on me. I really like that. And whenever there's a fitting feature like a side bust dart, I know that my bust height is lower than every single pattern I sew. So it's a given that I'll be dropping that bust dart down. Other fitting features, there is a really detailed size chart with finished measurements, and one of them is the finished length from nape to hem on the back. And just seeing that measurement meant I knew I had to lengthen mine by 2 inches to account for my height. The finished length right there I know is going to end up too short on me just because I'm taller. So there are plenty of shorten and lengthen lines on the pattern, and because the front has 2 sections, a top one with a placket and then a bottom one that's on the fold, I used both of those shorten and lengthen lines to add an inch here and an inch down below. And on the back piece that's cut on the fold, it's just one piece. I used both shorten and lengthen lines, and that's how I can get my 2 extra inches distributed along the whole garment and not just in one place. For the sleeves, there's also a line there for you to cut and do whatever you need to do, overlap or stretch the pattern, and I added an inch there, and I'm very happy with those length adjustments because I think the garment looks as intended on me. If I hadn't made those adjustments to account for my height, then I think this would look too short on me. And I have made garments that look too short on me, and I'm always pulling them down. Like, I feel uncomfortable in something too short. So those are all the fitting adjustments I had to do. It's a garment that will allow you to have space inside to wear a shirt, a turtleneck, whatever you want to wear underneath. You have enough space because you have ease. Positive ease at the bust around 5 inches, at the hips around 4 inches of positive ease. So it's nicely semi-fitted at the bust and hips, and you have more room at the waist. It's not an oversized, boxy, shapeless thing that you put on. Very far from it. The bust dart does wonders, and it's just the right amount of ease you want in a garment like this that's going to look good on you and not too big, not too small, just right. I have sewn 2 of them, and the first one I made, I filmed it for you, not the whole entire process from start to finish, but what I think is most interesting to see, and you will see steps that I have already done, but I mention them there and I show you them. I did a lot of prep work before even starting to sew, which I find is an easier way to tackle a project. So you will see an overview, the pattern pieces, general sewing construction, and I'm mainly focusing on how to do the binding, how to put that binding on to the edges where it goes, how to sew that placket, how to sew those cool pockets. Now about the snaps. This might be something that you are used to using. Maybe you have all the tools and the gadgets and the supplies. If you don't, you might be scared to do that as I was. I've never done that before, and I'd actually never seen snaps for sale anywhere. I had looked before. And when I applied to do this pattern test, I wasn't paying close attention when I saw the photos that Kenneth shared of her version. I saw the little things here on the placket, and I thought I just assumed they were buttons. So I assumed that there were buttonholes there and buttons when I applied for the test. And it's something you could do for sure. You know, it's perfectly doable. You have dots on the placket to show you where to put the snaps. You could do a buttonhole there instead. But in a pattern test, you want to follow the pattern as it is. So I visited a local seamstress that I know works in a really nearby tiny town. I know she has a lot of notions there in her shop. And she had some plastic snaps, the black ones that are the most common ones that you use, 12 millimeters. And she got from a plastic plate, she had them in, she grabbed a bunch and put them in a plastic bag for me and just gave them to me. She didn't even charge me for them. She showed me the tool that she uses, a type of plier, very cost effective, not expensive at all. I will put an image here and I'll try to find the link of something similar that you could find on Amazon or something like that. I have included in the sewing footage how I'm putting on these snaps. Maybe you can find something similar where you can purchase something like this. It's very, very cost effective. The snaps, you can get 200 for only a few dollars. And the pliers weren't expensive at all. And it was so much easier than I thought to put those in. So that's included too. These are the pattern pieces for the pullover, and the bag is just normal, cut on the fold. I have already done some prep work to all the pattern pieces, and you can see that black area there. That is the back shoulder stabilized, ready to be sewn onto that one, so it doesn't stretch. There's actually 3 pieces that make part of the front. The top of the front is not cut on the fold. You can see the cut edge there, and these are the placket pieces that will go there. The placket pieces are made out of a woven, not out of a low stretch knit. And according to your cup size, you will find a side bustard there that I have already sewn. The bottom of the front is cut on the fold. This area here, you can see the fold area. These are the pocket pieces that will be sewn onto the bottom of the front piece. And on the side, that black area is where I've stabilized already for the pockets that come later. You'll find a dot and a dot there in between those notches. You need to stabilize for afterwards. These are the pocket pieces that will go sewn onto there. They will be actually sewn on, they won't be moving around inside, so that's really nice. That small piece on the top will be the collar piece. Over there you can see the sleeve. One thing I've done to prepare all the pieces before I even start sewing is serge some of these edges. So these side seams have been serged separately. They aren't going to be together in the construction, so I might as well do it now. Same as the edge of the pocket, that curved edge needs to be serged. The edges there of the bottom of the front are also serged. Those edges are serged. The sides of each sleeve have been serged. So there's lots of things that have already been prepared. You don't have a hem allowance. That raw edge at the bottom will be wrapped around with bias tape that you make from the same woven you're going to use for the plackets. And that will be here for the bottom and for the sleeves and for the top of the collar. I will show you the binding pieces I've created with the same fabric I have here. It's a very, very lightweight denim. These placket pieces need to be interfaced. That's why you can see the wrong side of mine look black there, and there are a few notches for you to mark. It's this really nice lightweight denim. It's very lightweight and it'll contrast nicely with the print of my velvet. I've used the same fabric to make my binding pieces. Now the finished width of this binding is 1 inch, so you can buy pre-made bias tape that would work out of cotton, or you can make your own. If you want to make your own, you need to cut bias strips there that are almost 2 inches tall, just shy of the 2 inches, just shy of the 5 centimeters. When you have a bias tape maker, it's super easy because you can just pass it through there and you'll get 2 folds. If you don't, you can just fold one of the ends by 3/8 and leave the other one extended. If you just fold one of these long ends and leave the other one straight, this is the side that you'll sew onto the collar and then flip around. So the second fold is not needed actually, but because this does it, you know, it's there, but it's not going to disturb you. All you need to do is sew in that crease right there. I have 2 pieces long enough for the bottom of the sleeve. I have a longer piece here that will be for the bottom of the pullover, and another piece that is just enough for the collar piece. Here is the collar piece. I made sure I have the nap going the right way comparing to the other pattern pieces, so I don't make a mistake. And on the edge that doesn't have the notch, you know, the bottom one will have notches that will match the shoulder seams for later. So you put it wrong sides up, you put your binding on top, right side to wrong side, and you match it along the top here. Because I made bias tape that will be equivalent to the one that you buy, you will have a crease there on this side. So that is just where I'm going to sew. On that crease, it's 3/8 from the edge. And then you will take this and wrap it around like that and then edge stitch, and that's how the top of the collar will be finished. And it will be the same for the sleeves and for the bottom of the pullover. So remember, you're sewing the right side of the binding to the wrong side of the collar here. Now at the iron, you just need to press this, set it in nicely. Be careful you don't get rid of this crease you have there. Now you would just wrap this way, cover that seam, and then edge stitch that down. I'm going to hand baste this so I know that it's nice and neat. This is the right side of my collar piece, and we had sewn it from the wrong side, so now it's been flipped over to wrap around the raw edge. The fold that was already made is covering that seam, and I have hand basted that really quickly. And now I'm just going to sew on the edge. There's quite a few layers here, and I've lengthened my stitch length to 3.5, which is what I usually do with a lot of layers when I have a woven. What you are seeing here is the back. These are the shoulder seams that I have already sewn together with the front pieces right there. The other thing I have also done to the front piece is sew this side bustard, and you can see that the back shoulder was stabilized with interfacing before sewing the shoulder seam. So this is a very stable shoulder. It's not going to stretch like the fabric does, you know. Still, this fabric is pretty low stretch, but still it's important so that this doesn't deform over time. We take this collar piece that already has the top bound and just match it along the edge. There are 2 marks that match the shoulder seams. I press my shoulder seams towards the back. Now it's just a seam at 3/8. Now I'm just sewing the collar to the main neckline at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with a straight stitch, and then I'll just go ahead and serge that. After sewing the collar to the neckline, I'm going to take that seam allowance and point it down. And now from the right side, I'm going to top stitch this at 1/4 of an inch. There's the top stitching there. You can barely see it through the print, but it is nice and neat. Now we have the 2 center fronts ready. This includes the collar being sewn there, the total length from the collar down to here. So these are where the plackets are going to be sewn on. These plackets are interfaced. You will see that one of the long edges has been pressed in by 3/8 of an inch. I did a guide stitch there to help me do that accurately, and you just need to make sure that they're mirrored, that you have one folded there, one folded there, and that your notches match up. You have notches on the centers, and you have those notches there. Now, I love the way that this is going to be sewn onto the center front. You need to have the wrong side of the fabric looking at you. Take your placket piece and you will find a notch here. This notch is the one that's going to match the seam that unites the collar to the front here. And what you need to have is wrong side of your main fabric to the right side of your placket and match that up. You're supposed to have 3/8 of an inch on the top left over, protruding from the edge of the collar piece right there, and then just match it all up down to the bottom, and you do the same with the other front. I've sewn one, and you see that on the top I have 3/8 of an inch of the placket protruding. So you're supposed to have that. I'll just repeat on the other side. Both plackets are sewn. You have that protruding on top of each one. Here you have the folded edge that you have done first. The raw edge was the one sewn onto here, right side of placket to wrong side of the pullover. And I have gone ahead and pressed the seam allowance towards the placket that way. So now what you need to do is take the top, fold it onto itself, right sides together there. Make sure this folded edge protrudes from the one at the bottom by a tiny hair, like a 1/16 of an inch or something, like a millimeter. And now you're going to sew this together here on the top. A short little seam that will close up the top, and then you can flip it and it'll all be very neat. To trim away a little bit to reduce bulk, and then you can just fold that down, hold it and flip it, and you'll get a nice little sharp point there. I have a blunt coloring pencil always on hand to just help me push this from the other side a little bit. Nothing sharp because I don't want to go through anything. So that's how this is going to be on the top. You can see the placket finishes the raw edge from the collar and that binding that comes there. And then on this side, that is the right side, you're going to have it open, and then this seam will cover that seam, and we'll do an edge stitch down there. You know I'm going to hand baste that. So very easy. I'll just repeat on the other side, and then I'll be back to finish this edge right there, and that's how the placket is finished. After having the plackets done, these will overlap each other, and this is where the snaps go. I have marked the dots that are on the pattern there. There's 5 snaps, and I made sure to center them there at the correct height. And I have made the same marks on the other placket, making sure they are one on top of each other so it's really exact. I was able to find this type of tool plier, so I'm going to go ahead and put mine. To put one set of snaps, you always have these pieces like that. These are the plastic ones, and then you have 2 different types here. One has like a smaller circle, the other one a larger one, and that is the one that's going to go into there. So I have put one here. The one that goes on top has that you'll see visible on the outside, and then the smaller circle there. And on the other side I have the larger circle and the smooth part inside that's already been put on, and then you snap it. You are welcome to skip this footage if you have other tools, but it'll be the same concept. I have the mark there. I'll just push a hole through it with this thing. I'll get the first one, the visible one, and just put this through. On the other side I have the one that has the smaller circle, and I'll just put that through. And then I'll get this tool, and I have this like plastic transparent thing there. That's the one that goes on top, and the bottom smooth one is the one that will catch the smooth part of the snap. Push it. What this does is flatten that pointy thing that was in there and like squashes it in there. And then on the other side I have another mark. This is the part that goes on the back. So here you have this smooth side, this smooth piece coming from the back, poking up here. And then this one has like a larger opening. That's the one that you put on top there, so that that smaller one can snap into there later. That black piece goes on the bottom, this one goes on top, and then you just press it and done. And then you snap. Super easy. I've done 2 already. I'll just keep going. It's 5 of them. Okay, so putting the snaps on was fun, way faster than buttonholes and buttons. Now I have that front there, looking from the wrong side, and what I have pinned here is the bottom of the front piece that is cut on the fold. So on that bottom front piece you will find 2 notches there that will match this placket. You can see those red lines there. So just match everything up, and it's a straight seam there, 3/8 of an inch. Then this seam gets pressed towards the bottom. I'll do that, and then we'll do the side seams, and that includes the pocket piece. At this stage you would have sewn in your sleeve on the flat. That is how the instructions are. I prefer to sew my sleeve normally on the round later. It doesn't affect the way the garment looks, it'll still look the same. So in other case, I have sewn the side seam, just this part. If you would have sewn your sleeve in flat, you would have included the seam of the sleeve and all of this in one go. But it doesn't affect the way that you put the pocket, it's the same thing. When you stabilize this edge of the pocket, there was a dot there and a dot there, and you put your interfacing in between there. So from here you will do a straight stitch with a normal stitch length up to the dot, reinforce, and then keep going here with a long stitch. It's just a basting stitch up to there. Then you will pick up here, reinforce, and sew with a short stitch length up to the bottom. So this section that has the interfacing is sewn with a long stitch length. It'll be easy to remove later. And what you can see is that the seam allowance is bigger here on this area. So on this side it's 3/8, but here it's double that. So I've done that on both of the side seams. This is the same. I have the basting just on this edge, and from here down it's normal stitch. From here up is the normal stitch. It would be a good idea to go and press the seam allowance open actually. It's really hard to see what you're doing when you look at the fabric on the right side. But in essence, this is the side seam, this is the back, this is the front. This is the seam here that unites the top of the front with the bottom of the front. And if you look in here, this is the side where the seam allowance is slightly bigger, here on this part that's on the front. So you would have to sew a little rectangle holding that excess of seam allowance down, but I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to be working from the wrong side of the fabric because I can see there. So I'll basically just sew that seam allowance down as a rectangle there on both of these sides. With a regular stitch length, just start sewing where the actual seam is, right in the center of that seam. Come out, pivot, sew down, and then pivot again. This fabric has been giving me a rough time because it wants to get stuck to it, so yeah. Here's one of the side seams where I have just sewn that little rectangle there to hold that seam allowance down. This is the front. You can see the seam right there that unites the two areas of the front. And now you have pockets that are curved like this. So this straight edge needs to be serged, this round edge there needs to be serged, the bottom can be left raw. And you have on the top a little mark, 3/8 from the top, and at the bottom you have a mark there, and these will match the entrances of these pockets. So just match it up, everything will match. This raw edge will be right on the raw edge of the hem. What you need to do with this straight edge that has been serged is pin it along this smaller seam allowance at the back and sew it down there. So it'll be one little seam holding this to the seam allowance that's towards the back. Then once that's sewn, you can sew this from the edge at 3/8, and you'll be sewing through the two layers, the pocket piece and the front. So you'll just be sewing this down to the front basically, and then you can baste this at the bottom just to hold it together. This raw edge at the bottom will be bound. Okay, here's one of the pockets, and I have pinned it to the side seam of the back right there. I'm going to sew right on the edge, just a straight stitch, and then this curved area I have hand basted it, and I'll be careful to sew that. I won't need to worry about pins on that curve. Now this is just sewn onto the front layer. Because I did the basting far away from where I was going to sew, you can see how easy it is to just whip it out in 1 second. Both of the pockets have been sewn there to the back side seam, and then on the curve right there, I've also basted them on the bottom of the raw edge, here where the hem's going to be bound. And now what's left to do with these pockets is open up, so you can put your hands inside. So remember where we sewed that rectangle there? This section is just basted. You should be able to get your seam ripper, open up a stitch, open this up, just this section between that rectangle. Okay, so there was no need to see me seam ripping, but I have opened up that basted area. This is how you put your hand inside the pocket. This is the hem right there. So that's a little rectangle that was sewn there, holding that seam allowance down. It's not going to be seen from the outside. And you have the main fabric, and that's it. The pocket's not going to move anywhere, it's not going anywhere because it's all sewn onto the front piece. So basically the way I did the binding on the top of the collar is the same way I'm going to do the binding on the bottom here for the hem, and the same way for the sleeves. So I'll get that done, get my sleeves sewn in here, and that's it. Here is my tester version. It's a stretch velvet, has pretty low stretch. If I take a sleeve, for example, and try to stretch it, it just stretches tiny bit. I measured this at about 10% stretch. So it met the requirements for the stretch factor, so that's good. And if you are really, really detailed in your observation when I'm sewing, you might have noticed that my collar piece looked darker than the rest of the fabric on the inside, because the wrong side of the fabric is light colored. And I was worried that you were going to see that ugly, like lighter color inside when I wear the collar. It turns out you can't really see it unless you wear the placket open. You undo some snaps and just let it fall like that. But I was worried about that, and I didn't really have any other fabric to use that was appropriate. So what I did to the collar piece was fuse the lightest interfacing I have in my stash. It's very lightweight, it's like almost transparent. Even the interfacing, I can see through it when I'm making marks on fabric. So it doesn't contribute to making the collar stiff or anything. It didn't really change the properties of the fabric at all that much that I could tell if I touch this compared to a non-interfaced area. But I did that just to manipulate the fabric and make it look dark there, in case I want to wear this open. It's not part of the instructions, you don't need to interface the collar. Actually, the placket that is made out of woven will actually hold it up for you because the placket pieces are interfaced. So unless you use the floppiest fabric in the planet, your collar is not going to be like flopping over. I think one fabric that would flop a lot, you know that cuddle type fleece minky material? I have a blanket like that in the house and I touched it and I'm sure that one would flop over because the fabric itself is so floppy. But usually I wouldn't want to make something in that type of material. So that's why this collar looks like that. That's just something I did extra. It's not part of the pattern. I have this lightweight denim that I used to make the bias tape from. I had a piece left over from my Castle Point denim skirt that I made a few months ago from the So Beautiful book. It's a lovely light denim and I had a bit left. I always knew it was going to be good for something. And I'm always thrilled to be able to use scraps like that on projects like this. I think the denim looks nice on a placket, and I think plackets always look nice in like linen or denim, something like that. The bottom of the sleeve is finished in the same way, and I can see them in the tree right there, the culprits. And the bottom of the hem also has the same detail. Shut up, you guys. You don't have like a hem allowance on the pattern, you just wrap around that raw edge. On this area where the pocket is, you catch the bottom of the pocket there with this. So you have your side seam here and you put your hand in through there, and that's the pocket right there. And it's sewn on. I'll turn this inside out so you can see. Look, this fabric gave me a hard time, the velvety part, when it was touching my machine and the feed dogs, it kept trying to like get stuck, and yeah, it wasn't very nice. But it was only a few sections where I had to deal with that, otherwise it was fine. This is how it looks inside. You can see that the snaps have that smooth part inside as well. There is that seam right there, and here is the pocket. You can see that the pocket is placed onto the front right side of the fabric to the wrong side. So you can see on both of these pieces the wrong side here, and there is that little curve that you have to sew to hold it down to the front. You just put your hand in there and this doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't move anywhere. When you are sewing your binding on the round here on the sleeves, it's quite small, it won't fit your machine to put it in and like sew it like normal. So the way I like to do this is flip the sleeve to the wrong sides like this, and then put this inside. I've actually filmed it and I'm showing it to you. That is the easiest way I find that you can sew round things like this when it just won't fit into your machine normally to sew it, you know, with the right side of the fabric up. So that's how I've done this. Now let's see it on. I've got it paired with my Castle Point skirt, the same skirt I made with this denim fabric. I think they look really nice together. So let's see. This is a far away look at my Bainbridge pullover with my Castle Point skirt from the So Beautiful book. And actually this light denim is the same denim I've used for my plackets, my binding, all that. I had a little scrap left over. This is the length that I have achieved after some length adjustments to account for my height. I have a bust start to show you details about the placket, the pockets, everything up close up. I really like this print. It's got a bit of animal print mixed in there with black, and that's what I like about it. This is the height that I like. You can see the collar on the top. You can see that the edge is bound with bias tape, made the same bias tape to use the placket there. It is a woven, it's not meant to be made with a knit. And this knit also is very low stretch. If you see, it doesn't stretch more than 15 or 20%. Nice and structured, so it holds up this collar. And you know, this spacing here, I really like that. It's nice spacing there for you to be comfortable and also keep you warm. The placket is there, made out of denim with 5 little snaps. That was fun to do. It goes up to there. And on the side, according to your bust cup, you will have a side bust start. I had to lower mine by 1 inch, which is typical for me. And because I had to do that, I also had to lengthen the top front piece by 1 inch, which is expected because I'm tall. I usually need to do length adjustments like that. So I have an extra inch here. The seam at the bottom here makes sewing this placket super easy. This part is cut on the fold, and I also have an extra inch there. On the sides I have the pockets. I'll show you that in a second. But I just wanted to talk about this dart. It's amazing. You know, this is a loose, comfy style, and there's no extra bagginess here. Look how smooth it is on the side. You know, it's perfect. There's no drag lines that you will usually see in knit projects that are boxy and don't have a dart. It's just really nice, so good. The back is just normal, cut on the fold. Sleeves are nice and long. I had to add 1 inch to mine to achieve the desired length. You can see it's also bound there with the same lightweight denim, very nice. You can see the bottom bit better, the pocket I want to show you. There is a side seam, and from this side seam you have an opening. You already saw how that was done. They're inseam pockets, but there's not a pocket bag. The pocket is sewn onto the front. So there's nothing dangling, nothing creating bulk, nothing bothering you inside. Very nice to put your hands in there. I really like these pockets. And then all the raw edges are caught with the bias tape that is the same for the sleeves and the collar on the top. You can see there's a nice amount of ease at the hips, about 4.5 inches. I can pinch 1 inch. That means I've got 2 here, 2 there. Very nice, not boxy, just enough space. Really like it. So just account for your height if you're shorter or taller. Easy to do the adjustments because there are the lines on the pattern for that. So I know when it gets cold I will want to wear this a lot. I think this is a type of pullover that looks harder to sew than it really is. It's really easy to sew. The placket is easy to sew. Even if you get the hang of doing snaps, it takes no time at all compared to what buttonholes and buttons take to do, although I do like those as well. So very happy, recommend. The cup size and the dart take it to another level, and I am very happy with that.
Don't you think this is starting to wear me? You've been raining down like hail. I'm weak. I have tried to give you my soul, but you can't love something you own. It's too late to repair what we made. What can I do? Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon.
I think this type of fabric dresses up the outfit, and I could go to church like that. My main goal basically is to dress up everything that I make, even if it's something really sporty like this. You know, it just depends on the fabric choice. It could be extremely casual, and being exactly the same pattern and sewn in the same way but just with a different type of fabric, I think I could get away with it being a bit more dressy. And that's my style, and that's why I like to make things like that. So I really like that. After sewing that one, I got busy and went to sew another one. This is not an official tester version because I made one change to it. And for you who know me and have been watching my videos for a while, you probably guess what the change was that I made to it. It actually doesn't require you to change anything, nothing of the pattern pieces. You're just skipping one feature, which is the pocket feature. Makes sewing it so much faster. You can go ahead and sew that seam on the sides without an issue. You know, the pattern has an excess there on the front. You can just fold that away in your pattern piece and just sew it normal with your 3/8 seam allowance, and you're done. You don't need to do anything extra like change pattern pieces as such. And the look of the garment, you won't really see much. You can't really tell that much that the pockets aren't there. And I'm practical, you know, the pockets were fun to sew, and I do like them because they're fixed onto the front of the garment and the hem, so there's no pocket bag moving around or anything. I decided to make this one just more free going, easy sewing, faster sewing, and something that looks pretty much the same that I know I'm going to enjoy wearing. And it's a different fabric, it's a sweater knit. I really enjoy this one. I made a sweater recently with the same type of fabric in green. It's called mélange, lurex or something like that. Maybe you can see it's got these tiny speckles of like metallic shiny thing there. You can't really see it that much, but it's a really nice color and I really love how this feels on. It is lighter, it is a little drapier, but still it's low stretch, like it barely stretches, look. It's got very minimal stretch, so very easy to sew with. I know the fabric because I've used it already for other projects, so I wasn't trying to guess how to manipulate it or anything like that. And for this one, I made my binding out of a cotton shirting. This fabric is actually a mix. It's a mix of cotton and linen, mainly cotton, a little bit of linen, and it's extremely easy to press and cut and sew. You know, you saw me hand basting the denim because it was a bit thicker, a bit bulkier. And I felt that the denim touching the velvet wanted to slip around a little bit, so I did hand baste some of these areas for my grey sweater. But for this one, I used pins. I went rogue and I just pinned everything. I didn't baste a single thing by hand to make this one. And it's just as nice, just as accurate. I have the same type of black snaps. Actually, I only have black snaps. I don't have them in other colors. I'll have to see if I can find other colors. But I might become a bit addicted to putting snaps because it takes no time at all and so much faster than doing buttonholes and buttons, although I do like doing that as well. So otherwise it's the same. Maybe you can see the seam that goes here on the front and it's been top stitched. I like that this is a solid. Maybe you can see a little bit more and maybe you can see the bust dart there. You can see it right there. So it's very nice that is my favorite thing to sew from this pattern, because it's such an easy feature to sew on a pattern that makes such a difference in the fit. And it's so nice. That's the back, the hem right there. Just the same thing, you know, this one took probably 2 hours to sew from start to finish, compared to the other one that took probably 3.5. But because the fabric was harder to work with and I was also filming everything, so it took a little bit longer. It's not a project that would take you days to sew or like a whole day to make. It's very nice and I really enjoyed it. So let's see how this one looks. Here's my second Bainbridge pullover from Itch to Stitch. This is a lighter sweater knit. It still stretches minimally, horizontally, vertically, barely anything, but it's a lighter type of material. I think it drapes a little more than the stretch velvet. The only difference with this one is that I just sewed the side seams closed and I don't have the pockets there to put my hands in. I knew I wanted to make it again just simple like that because I never use pockets. Love the color and I've done the contrast with a binding that is made out of a cotton shirting material, so it feels very nice and it was very easy to work with. It's nice and roomy but also has some shaping here on the top. It's not a boxy garment, it has shaping. The bust darts are amazing. My versions have 2 inches added extra length and I like that. It's right there at the hip on the side like that. I wouldn't want it to be lower or covering my bottom, but I think if I didn't add the length it would be too short. I have an extra inch on the sleeves which was needed as well. There you can see how the bottom is finished with the binding. Super neat. It's super easy to do as well. Really like that, and the bottom too. Because this is a solid, I'm hoping you can see the darts. It's right there, it's right where it has to be for my body. I had to lower it by 1 inch, which is what I do always. And you can see here how smooth this is. There's no drag lines coming like this or excess boxiness here on the sides. And you know, even though the shoulder is slightly dropped, it's still a really good fit down here, which you usually don't get with oversized garments that don't have shaping. Placket, super easy to sew because there is a seam right there. This is very nice. The collar is just at the right height, not choking anyone, but you've got enough space if you want to layer and use like a turtleneck underneath or something. Totally have space to do that. I'd probably just wear it with a sleeveless top or a cami underneath. That's pretty much all I need. The top of the collar looks very neat there with the bias tape and the placket made out of the same fabric. Really enjoyed sewing it. Super easy, easier than what you think. I do like the original pockets like the velvet version, but I think I would always skip them just because I always carry a handbag, and if I'm not going to put things in there, I just don't see the point in having pockets. But they are nice ones because they don't move around. There's no excess bulk or anything. I really like these. There's not many patterns where you can use those low stretch knits, and I love that this is one of them. Looks different than the other one, feels different. I think this one has a little bit more drape. I feel super spoiled with the cup sizes on a pattern like this because you get comfort, you get all of that, and excellent shaping here on the top, which is amazing.
Don't you think this is starting to wear on me? but you can't love something you own. It's too late to repair what we made. What can I do? Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon.
I really enjoyed sewing these. I really enjoy the fit. I think having bust cup sizes here is a treat. It's like spoiling us because we can have a sporty, casual thing like this that is super practical, but that also fits our bust really well. Depending on the fabric that you choose, you can have so many different looks to this. And it can work for different types of weather depending on how warm your fabric is. In my case, both of these aren't warm fabrics, so I'm sure I'm going to get some good use out of them during the year. I'm very sure you would enjoy sewing this as much as I have, and that's why I recommend. So have a look at this pattern if you want to. My affiliate link is down below. And remember, it's 20% off for a week for the release week. And that's what I've got for you today. Hope you enjoyed seeing these different things like snaps from me, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.